I still remember the sound of that wind, the kind that howls, like it's alive, like it wants something. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share real-life stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. It was the winter of 1978, and I was 14 years old, sitting in the back seat of my dad's old green Chevy Impala. The heater had given up an hour ago, and the windows were fogging up from my breath, little clouds of warmth that disappeared as fast as they formed. Dad was gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles were white. He didn't say much. He never really did. The AM radio was hissing with static, but every few minutes, the voice of a panicked weatherman would cut through. Whiteout conditions, state troopers urging everyone to stay off the roads. But my dad wasn't the type to turn back. He was a truck mechanic, stubborn as they come. We were supposed to be heading home to Toledo from a visit to my aunt's place in Massachusetts. He said we'd beat the storm if we left early enough. He was wrong. By the time we hit the New York border, it was like driving through milk. Everything was white. The road, the sky, they had melted together into one endless, freezing nightmare. Dad leaned forward, squinting into the void. "We'll stop soon," he muttered. But soon never came when Dad was behind the wheel. About an hour later, the gas gauge was dipping low, and I saw a flickering sign through the storm, "Rest area, 1 mile." I sat up straighter. "Dad, can we stop? I gotta pee." My voice cracked from the cold. He didn't answer at first. Then he sighed, nodded once. "Fine. Make it quick." When we finally pulled into the rest stop, the snow was halfway up the tires. The building was dark, the big glass doors crusted with ice. A laminated sign flapped uselessly in the wind, "Closed for maintenance." I tried the handle anyway. It didn't budge. "It's locked." I yelled over the wind. Dad leaned across the seat and popped the glove box, searching for something. "There's a bathroom around back," he said. "Go quick. I'll turn the car around so the headlights face the road." I remember hesitating. The storm was so thick I couldn't even see the edge of the parking lot. But I was young and scared to argue. So I pulled my coat tight and trudged around the side of the building, snow biting my ankles with every step. The world disappeared behind me. The roar of the wind swallowed the car, the road, everything. There was a small concrete structure near the back, half buried in snow. A cinderblock bathroom. I pushed inside. It was freezing, dark except for the dim light from a flickering bulb. The smell of old mop water and rust hit me like a wall. I did what I came to do, and when I came back out, the world had changed. The parking lot was empty. No headlights. No engine rumble. No Dad. Just the storm, screaming louder than before. At first, I thought maybe he'd parked somewhere else, maybe to face the road like he said. I started walking in what I thought was the direction of the car, but every few steps, the wind pushed me sideways, blinding me. My boots sank deep, and my fingers went numb even inside my mittens. "Dad!" I shouted. My voice vanished into the white noise. "Dad!" Nothing. I don't know how long I wandered before I realized I couldn't tell which way was back. My footprints had already filled in behind me. The snow was knee-deep now, and I could barely feel my toes. That's when I saw the light. At first, it looked like a star, a tiny orange glow, moving slowly through the white blur. I squinted, heart pounding. The glow got bigger, brighter, until I could make out the shape of a truck cab, its headlights slicing through the storm like two golden knives. The truck slowed, brakes squealing, and then stopped a few yards away. The passenger door creaked open, and a man leaned out, big shoulders, thick beard dusted with snow, a knit cap pulled low over his eyes. "You lost, kid," he shouted over the wind. I just stood there, teeth chattering. I couldn't even form words. He climbed down, his boots crunching in the snow, and came closer, holding out his arm. "Come on, you'll freeze to death out here." I hesitated. Dad always told me never to talk to strangers. But then again, Dad was the one who'd left me here. So I took his hand. The warmth of his glove felt like fire. He half carried me to the truck and lifted me inside. The cabin was a miracle of heat and light, the dashboard glowed orange, and the smell of coffee and diesel filled the air. He shut the door and turned to look at me. "Name's Hank," he said. "You all right, sweetheart?" I nodded, shivering. My dad, he was supposed to be here. He said he'd turn the car around. Hank frowned, rubbing his chin. "Ain't no cars out here, not for miles. Roads are all closed. You're lucky I saw you." He reached behind his seat and handed me a wool blanket. "Wrap up. We'll figure this out." I stared out the window, but all I could see was a wall of white. Somewhere out there was my dad, or maybe just an empty car buried in snow. "Where were you headed?" Hank asked, starting the engine again. "Toledo," I whispered. He gave a low whistle. "Long way from here. Roads are gonna be hell tonight. Best we find a safe spot till morning." As the truck rumbled back onto the highway, I curled under the blanket and tried not to cry. I wanted to believe Dad would come back for me. That maybe he'd just gotten turned around. But a voice in the back of my head, the one that always sounded like Mom before she passed, whispered something I didn't want to hear. "He's not coming back." The storm got worse. The windshield wipers clacked uselessly against the ice. Hank kept one hand on the wheel and the other on the CB radio, scanning for any signal. "Breaker 19, anyone out there? Got a lost girl out here, looks like her old man got separated." Static. Then a faint voice replied, "Ain't no one on these roads, Hank. You best hunker down." He sighed, glancing at me. "Guess it's just us for the night." Somewhere in the distance, thunder cracked, or maybe it was the sound of a tree snapping under the weight of snow. I pulled the blanket tighter and tried to stay awake, but exhaustion was setting in. My last memory before drifting off was Hank humming quietly to himself, an old country tune, something about lost highways and second chances. When I woke up, the storm had gone silent. The world outside was pale blue, the kind of eerie morning light that makes everything feel still. The windows were frosted, and the truck wasn't moving. Hank was gone. When I woke up, the world was silent. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums, makes you wonder if you've gone deaf. The truck wasn't moving. The heater had stopped humming. The air inside had that still, heavy chill, like the warmth had escaped in the night. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and that's when I realized Hank was gone. His seat was empty, his jacket still hanging on the hook by the door, but no sign of him anywhere. My stomach tightened. Hank? My voice came out hoarse, cracking through the quiet. Nothing. I leaned forward and peered through the windshield. All I could see was white stretching forever. The snow was piled so high it covered half the truck's front bumper. I checked the passenger window, same thing. Just endless, blinding white. My breath fogged the glass as I tried to look for footprints or movement, but there was nothing out there except the faint trace of wind. My heart started to race. Maybe he'd gone outside to check something, maybe the engine, or the fuel line. But that didn't make sense. Why would he go out there without his coat? I grabbed his jacket off the hook, slid my arms into it, and climbed into the driver's seat. The keys were still in the ignition, but when I turned them, nothing happened. Dead. The radio was silent, too, just soft static. I grabbed the CB mic, pressing the button like I'd seen Hank do. Hello? This is someone out here in the blizzard. I'm in a truck, I think near the I-90. My name's, I stopped. My name caught in my throat. Saying it out loud suddenly felt dangerous, like if I said it, something out there would hear me. I let go of the button. The radio crackled softly, then went dead again. My stomach growled. The dashboard clock said 6:13 a.m. My hands were shaking, not just from the cold now, but from something else, fear, that prickling feeling that creeps up the back of your neck when you realize you're alone in a place you shouldn't be. I decided to open the door. The wind hit me like a wall when I stepped down, nearly knocking me over. I had to brace myself against the side of the truck just to stay upright. The snow was almost up to my knees, icy and powdery, and every step I took sank deep. Hank! I screamed into the wind. My voice was swallowed whole. No echo, no answer. Just white nothing. I walked around the front of the truck, shielding my face with my arm. I found footprints, big ones, half filled with snow, leading away toward the trees lining the rest stop. Relief flooded me. Okay, he's just out there, maybe checking the road. I followed them, step by step, until they disappeared under a drift. I kept walking anyway, because stopping meant freezing. I don't know how long I went before I saw it, a dark shape slumped near a fallen tree. For a second, I thought it was Hank. My chest tightened with hope. Hank! I called, running toward it. But when I got closer, my breath caught. It wasn't him. It was a car door. Half buried in snow, torn clean off its hinges. And it was green. The same green as my dad's Impala. My legs went weak. I fell to my knees, brushing away the snow with shaking hands. Underneath, I could see the curve of the hood, the cracked chrome of the bumper. The car was almost completely buried, like it had been sitting there for hours, maybe longer. Dad? I whispered. I clawed at the driver's side door until my fingers burned, but it wouldn't budge. I circled to the other side, slipping, falling, getting up again. When I finally reached the window, I pressed my face to the glass. The inside was empty. The seat was pushed back. The keys were still dangling from the ignition. But there was something else, something on the passenger seat. A glove. My glove. The one I'd dropped the night before when I ran around the building. I stumbled backward, breathing fast. My head was spinning. It didn't make sense. How could the car be here? How could it be half buried already? I turned back toward the truck, but now the world looked different. The snow had shifted. The wind had picked up again. The footprints, mine, Hank's, were gone. The only thing I could see now was that endless white, closing in on me from every direction. I ran. I didn't even know where I was running to, just that I had to move. My lungs burned. My face stung. And then, through the blur of snow, I saw the truck again, or what I thought was the truck. But when I reached it, my stomach dropped. It wasn't the same truck. It was smaller, older, and covered in rust, like it had been sitting there for years. The cab door hung open, the interior coated in frost. I froze, staring at the empty driver's seat. The steering wheel was wrapped in cracked leather. The dashboard was shattered. There was no sign of Hank. No warmth. No life. Just the echo of wind moving through metal. I backed away slowly. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That's when I noticed something hanging from the rearview mirror, a small, faded photograph. I reached in and plucked it out with numb fingers. It was a picture of a man standing next to a truck, smiling proudly. The name embroidered on his jacket said, Hank. But the photo was old. The edges were yellowed. The date scrawled on the back read February 1978. The same storm. I dropped it. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. I looked around, half expecting to see someone, anyone, but the storm had swallowed everything again. I climbed into the cab anyway, desperate for shelter, and pulled the door shut. The cold was suffocating. I curled into the seat and tried to calm my breathing. My mind raced. What if I'd died out there and didn't realize it yet? What if this was some kind of loop, some cruel trick of the storm? I didn't know what to believe anymore. Then I heard it. A sound behind me. Soft. Rhythmic. Like footsteps crunching in the snow. Slow, steady, deliberate. Getting closer. I turned toward the side mirror, but it was frosted over. I rubbed it with my sleeve, peering through the thin layer of ice. At first, I saw nothing. Just a blur of white. Then, movement. A shape. A man's silhouette, walking slowly toward the truck. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat that looked a lot like Hank's. My breath hitched. Hank? I whispered. He didn't answer. He just kept walking until he reached the side of the truck. Then he stopped. I could see his face now, or at least I thought I could. The beard, the hat, it looked like him, but his eyes were wrong. They were too dark. Too hollow. He reached for the door handle, and for a second, I thought he was going to open it. But instead, he just pressed his hand flat against the glass. His skin was pale, bluish, almost translucent. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. He leaned in close, his mouth moving like he was trying to say something, but I couldn't hear the words. Then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he was gone. I blinked, and the spot where he'd been was empty. No footprints. No shadow. Nothing. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the glass, waiting for something else to happen. But the world outside had gone still again. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. I must have fallen asleep, because when I opened my eyes again, the light had changed. It wasn't the gray blue of dawn anymore, it was full daylight. And the snow had stopped. I pushed open the door and stepped out. The world was unrecognizable. The highway was visible again, a narrow black ribbon cutting through the snowdrifts. Cars were moving in the distance, slowly, cautiously. I stumbled toward the road, waving my arms. A trucker spotted me and pulled over, his brake lights glowing red. He rolled down his window, eyes wide. "Jesus, kid, you okay? You been out here all night?" I nodded weakly. He got out and helped me climb into his cab. The heat blasted my face like a miracle. "You're lucky to be alive," he said, shaking his head. "State troopers said the blizzard killed half a dozen drivers last night. One of them was found just up the road." I looked at him, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean?" "Old fella in a green Impala," he said. "Ran off the road. Must have been hours before anyone found him." My throat closed. I turned to look out the window. The snow-covered trees blurred past, and for just a second, I thought I saw a figure standing at the edge of the rest stop, watching us drive away. Tall. Still. Wearing a knit cap. I blinked, and he was gone. But the chill he left behind never really went away. The new trucker's name was Ray. He had a gentle voice and the kind of face that looked like it had seen too many winters. He kept glancing over at me as we drove, like he wasn't sure if I was real. I couldn't blame him. I wasn't sure either. "You're sure you're all right?" he asked again. I nodded, staring down at my frozen hands. "Yeah. I think so." My voice didn't sound like mine. It was thin, fragile, hollow. "You said my dad," he nodded slowly, eyes flicking to the road. "Yeah." They pulled his car out about 2 miles back. Looked like he tried to keep going through the drift, but the engine flooded. Poor guy never made it out. I stared straight ahead, my throat burning. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I already knew. Somehow, I'd known the moment I saw that car half buried in the snow. He left me, and the storm took him. Still, part of me wanted to ask if maybe they were wrong. Maybe he was in a hospital somewhere. Maybe, but the words never came out. The road stretched endlessly in front of us, lined with mounds of snow taller than cars. Every few miles, we'd pass an abandoned vehicle, half covered and glinting with ice. It was like a graveyard of frozen time. Ray turned down the radio, his fingers drumming the steering wheel. "That storm was no joke," he said quietly. "Blizzard of '78, they're calling it. Never seen anything like it in my life. I didn't answer. I was still staring out the window when something caught my eye, a flash of movement near one of the rest stops we passed. A figure. Standing still in the snow. Watching. My chest tightened. I blinked, and it was gone. You okay? Ray asked, noticing me tense up. Yeah. Thought I saw something. He glanced over but didn't push it. I think he figured I was still in shock. Maybe I was. A few hours later, we stopped at a diner off the highway. The neon sign flickered weakly, and the windows were fogged from the heat inside. Ray led me in, his hand firm on my shoulder like he was afraid I'd vanish if he let go. The warmth hit me hard, almost dizzying. The smell of coffee and bacon filled the air. A waitress with tired eyes and a teased-up bun looked me over. Poor thing, she murmured. You were out in that storm? I nodded. She's a lucky one, Ray said, shaking his head. If I hadn't seen her on the side of the road, the waitress poured me a cup of cocoa, setting it down with a soft clink. You get that in you, sweetheart. You'll feel human again. I cupped the mug in my hands and let the heat soak in. For a while, I didn't say anything. I just watched the snow falling outside the window, gentle now, almost peaceful. Like it wasn't the same storm that had swallowed my whole world the night before. Ray went to call the state police from the payphone near the counter. The waitress sat down across from me, her eyes kind but curious. Where were you headed, honey? Toledo, I said quietly. With my dad. That's a long way. You got anyone waiting for you there? I hesitated. My aunt. Maybe. She smiled sadly. Well, you'll get to her soon. Folks like you deserve a warm bed after what you've been through. I tried to smile back, but it felt wrong, like my face didn't remember how. A few minutes later, Ray returned. Police said they'll meet us in Albany, he said. They'll take care of you from there. I nodded. We left the diner a little before sunset. The sky was painted orange and purple, the kind of beauty that didn't seem to fit what had happened. I glanced at the diner one last time through the side mirror. That's when I saw it again, the figure. Standing at the edge of the parking lot, facing the truck. I gasped. Ray, stop. He slammed the brakes, tires squealing. What is it? I pointed out the window. There. Someone's out there. He followed my gaze, frowning. Where? The spot was empty. Nothing but snow and shadow. I swear, I saw, you're seeing ghosts, kid, he said softly, shaking his head. Happens after a shock like that. But I knew what I'd seen. The tall shape. The cap pulled low. The same figure I'd seen before. The one from the storm. The one who looked like Hank. Or maybe Dad. I didn't know anymore. We kept driving. Darkness fell again, and the road seemed longer than before. I tried to stay awake, but the hum of the engine and the rhythm of the tires lulled me under. I drifted in and out of dreams, faces in the snow, whispers I couldn't quite hear, a hand reaching for mine. When I woke, the truck had stopped. The lights were off. Everything was still. "Ray?" I called softly. No answer. My heart sank. Not again. I reached for the door handle, but before I could open it, I heard movement outside. Slow footsteps crunching through the snow. I held my breath. The door creaked open, and for a second I thought it was him again, the figure from the storm, but it was Ray. He was pale, shaking. "Truck's dead," he muttered. Battery froze solid. He rubbed his arms, looking around nervously. "We'll have to wait till daylight." He climbed back in, slamming the door shut. "We'll be fine," he said, like he was trying to convince himself. "Just fine." I pulled my knees up to my chest, clutching the blanket he'd given me. But then, faintly, through the howling wind outside, I heard it. A knock. 3 slow knocks against the side of the truck. Ray's eyes met mine. "Did you?" Another knock. Louder this time. He grabbed a flashlight and opened the window an inch, shining the beam into the dark. "Hello? Anyone out there?" The light reflected off something, a shape moving between the snowbanks. A man's silhouette. Ray cursed under his breath and shut the window. "Get down," he whispered. "Stay low." I slid onto the floor, my heart slamming in my chest. The knocking started again, moving around the truck, tapping along the metal like fingers dragging across a coffin. Ray reached for the CB mic, but when he pressed the button, all we heard was static, and a faint voice beneath it. A man's voice. Whispering something I couldn't make out. Then, clear as day, "You left her." My blood turned to ice. Ray dropped the mic, eyes wide. What the hell? The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I don't know how long we sat there. Minutes. Maybe hours. At some point, exhaustion took over, and I drifted off again, curled up on the floor. When I opened my eyes, morning light was spilling through the windshield. The truck door was open. Snow had drifted in across the floor mats. Ray was gone. I scrambled to my feet, panic flooding through me. I jumped down from the cab and looked around, but all I saw were footprints leading away from the truck. The same size as before. The same direction. I followed them. The air was quiet now, eerily calm. The snow sparkled like glitter under the pale sun. I walked until the prints stopped abruptly at the edge of a frozen pond. The surface was cracked, dark water visible beneath. And there, half submerged in the ice, was a hat. A knit cap. My stomach dropped. I fell to my knees, staring at it, my breath fogging the air. The wind whispered through the trees, faint but familiar, like a voice I'd heard before. "Come home." I turned sharply. No one there. But then I saw something on the other side of the pond, a figure standing among the trees. The same tall shape, watching. I didn't move. I couldn't. He lifted his arms slowly, pointing toward the road behind me. I turned to look. In the distance, through the thin veil of snow, I could see the outline of another truck approaching. Its headlights cut through the white, bright and warm. I looked back toward the trees, but the figure was gone. Just empty forest. When the truck reached me, a man leaned out the window. "You need help?" he shouted. I nodded, too weak to speak. He helped me climb in, wrapped me in a blanket, and started driving. "Name's Tom," he said. "What were you doing out here alone?" I stared out the window, watching the trees fade into the distance. "Looking for someone," I whispered. He nodded slowly, like he didn't need more explanation. We drove in silence for a while. I must have drifted off again, because the next thing I knew, we were pulling into a police station parking lot. Tom got out and talked to one of the officers while I stayed in the cab, staring down at my hands. When he came back, he smiled softly. "You're safe now, kid. They'll take care of you." I nodded. "Thank you." He gave me a small wave and drove off. But as he disappeared down the road, I noticed something strange in the reflection of the truck window beside me. My own face, pale, hollow-eyed, and behind it, just for a second, another reflection. A man's face. Bearded. Smiling faintly. Wearing a knit cap. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the sound of the wind picking up again, whispering through the trees like a memory that refuses to die. The cops at the Albany station were kind enough, but they looked at me like I was some ghost that had wandered in from another world. Maybe I was. They wrapped me in another blanket, gave me coffee so hot it burned my tongue, and asked questions I barely heard. Name, age, parents, where I'd been. I answered in fragments, half of it sounding made up even to my own ears. When I told them about Hank, the trucker who'd found me, the one who'd vanished, they exchanged glances. One of them, Officer Miller, scratched his chin. "Ain't nobody by that name reported missing," he said quietly. "You sure you didn't dream him up in the storm?" I wanted to laugh, but the sound stuck in my throat. Dream him up? I could still smell the diesel, still hear his voice over the wind. "He was real," I said. "He saved me." Miller nodded like he was humoring a child. "They kept me there overnight, found my aunt's number, said she was driving up from Toledo to get me. I should have felt safe, but I didn't. Even in that warm room with fluorescent lights humming overhead, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing just outside the window, watching. I hardly slept. Every time my eyes closed, I saw headlights cutting through snow, the green Impala half buried, a hand pressing against the glass. When morning came, the world outside had changed again, bright, clear, the storm gone like it had never happened. My aunt arrived around noon, wrapping me in a hug that felt like sunlight after months of night. "Oh honey," she whispered, "thank God you're alive." The ride home was long. She tried to make small talk, but I barely heard her. Every now and then she'd glance over, worried, asking if I needed to stop, if I wanted to eat. I just kept staring out the window. The snowbanks blurred past, mile after mile of frozen quiet. Somewhere near Buffalo, the radio crackled with an old news broadcast replay. State officials confirm at least 12 fatalities from the blizzard, including several motorists found stranded near Route 90. I turned it off. My aunt squeezed my hand. "You don't have to listen to that, sweetie." But the silence that followed was worse. When we finally reached Toledo, it felt like stepping into a different planet. Slush melting, kids throwing snowballs, neighbors shoveling sidewalks like nothing had happened. My aunt's house smelled like cinnamon and dust. She made me soup, tucked me into the guest bed, and promised everything would be okay. I almost believed her. For a while, things seemed normal. School reopened. The newspapers called it the Great Blizzard of '78. They printed photos of buried cars and rescue crews, and once, buried on the back page, I saw it, a picture of a semi-truck half-collapsed in a ditch. The caption read, "Wreckage recovered from Route 90, no driver found." My heart skipped. The logo on the door was the same faded blue stripe I remembered from Hank's truck. No driver found. I stared at that photo until my eyes blurred. That night, I dreamed I was back in the storm. The wind howled, the snow burned my face, and somewhere ahead, headlights flashed once, twice, like a signal. I woke up gasping, the room dark except for the faint glow of the streetlight outside. For a moment, I thought I heard an engine idling. Low. Distant. I crept to the window. The street was empty. Just tire tracks in the snow that hadn't been there before. I told myself I was imagining things. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, my aunt handed me the mail, envelopes, bills, and one small brown package with no return address. "Looks like it's for you," she said, raising an eyebrow. I opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was an old photograph, wrapped in tissue paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was the same picture I'd seen hanging in Hank's truck, the man with the beard and the proud smile, standing beside his rig. Only this time, there was someone else in the frame. A girl. 14 maybe. Standing beside him, bundled in a coat, her hair whipping in the wind. Me. My heart stopped. I flipped it over. On the back, written in faded ink, were 5 words, "Thanks for the ride, kid." I dropped the photo. My aunt rushed in, asking what was wrong, but I couldn't answer. My mind was spinning. How could that picture exist? How could he have known? That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps in snow. Every gust of wind against the window made me flinch. Around 2 a.m., I heard it again, that low hum of an engine idling somewhere outside. I got up, heart pounding, and peeked through the curtains. At the far end of the street, under the flickering streetlight, sat a truck. Big, old, familiar. Its headlights were off, but I could see the outline of the cab, the shape of the mirrors. I pressed my hand to the glass. The truck's headlights flickered once, on, off, like a blink. Then the engine roared to life. I stumbled back, whispering, "No, no, no." My aunt's voice called from the hallway. "You okay?" I turned to answer, but when I looked back at the street, the truck was gone. Just empty road and falling snow. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, my aunt said she'd heard nothing. "Bad dream," she said. "You've had plenty of those." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was losing my mind. But when I stepped outside later that day, I saw them, fresh tire tracks in the driveway. Only 2 deep grooves, no footprints. Just like before. Spring came, but the chill never left me. I'd walk past truck stops and feel my heart race whenever I heard diesel engines. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of a face in a crowd, a beard, a cap, and my stomach would twist. Years passed. I grew up, moved away, tried to build a normal life. But every winter, when the first snow falls, I feel it again. The air changes. The silence thickens. And sometimes, if I listen closely enough, I swear I can still hear the faint sound of a truck engine idling somewhere far off. Once, a few years ago, I drove back east for work. Curiosity or fate, I don't know. I found myself near the same stretch of highway where it all happened. The rest stop was still there, or what was left of it. Boarded up building, cracked asphalt, weeds poking through the snow. I parked and got out, my breath fogging the air. Everything was quiet, except for the soft whisper of wind through broken glass. I walked around the side of the building, the same path I'd taken all those years ago. The old concrete bathroom was still standing, half buried, the door rusted shut. My chest ached with every step. When I reached the back lot, I froze. There, just beyond the tree line, something gleamed beneath a layer of frost. I brushed the snow away, my hands trembling. A piece of chrome. A hood ornament. The same old green Impala emblem. My dad's car. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. It couldn't be here. They said they towed it decades ago. I looked around, but the lot was empty. Then I heard it, the crunch of boots behind me. Slow. Steady. I turned. A man stood there. Not Hank. Not my dad. Someone else. Or maybe both. His outline flickered in the light, shifting like smoke. "You made it back," he said, his voice deep and calm, blending with the wind. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. "Who are you?" I whispered. He tilted his head. "You already know." My breath caught. "Hank?" He smiled faintly. "Storm's coming again." I glanced up at the sky. The clouds had thickened, swirling gray and white. The first flakes were falling, slow and deliberate. When I looked back, he was gone. Only footprints remained, leading toward the old highway. I followed them until they faded into snow. Then I heard the sound, the same low hum of an engine, distant but growing louder. Headlights cut through the storm, two golden eyes piercing the white. I stood frozen as the truck rolled slowly past, its tires whispering against the snow. Through the window, I saw the silhouette of a man at the wheel. He turned his head toward me, and for a moment our eyes met. He smiled. Then the truck faded into the white, the sound of the engine melting into the wind. I stood there until the snow covered my boots, until the cold bit my skin, until I couldn't tell where the road ended and the storm began. People say the blizzard of '78 was one of the worst in history. But they don't know the half of it. Some storms never really end. They just wait for you to come back. And if this story gave you chills, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. It's free, and it really helps the channel grow. I've got more real-life horror stories and unbelievable survival moments just like this one, and trust me, You don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, stay warm out there, and if you ever find yourself driving through a blizzard, keep an eye on the mirrors. Some storms never really end.